Chapter 1. Why this novel? Mark had lived a life so ordinary it was almost enviable. A steady salary, a quiet rented apartment, weekend takeout, late-night BL novels, and an unashamed fondness for omegaverse stories where powerful alphas fell hard and irrevocably. He liked routine, peace, the small, blissful certainty of knowing tomorrow would look much like today. And then he died. Or rather, he woke up. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar, high, sculpted, inlaid with gold lines that caught the morning light. The bed beneath him was too large, the sheets too soft, the scent in the air faintly sharp and commanding. Mark stared blankly for a few seconds. Ah, this wasn't his apartment. A flood of memories, foreign, heavy, authoritative, poured into his mind. Balance sheets, board meetings, hostile takeovers, a name spoken with respect and fear. Ethan Cole, Alpha, CEO of Cole Dynamics, top of the food chain. Mark sat up slowly, pressing a hand to his chest as his heartbeat steadied far too quickly for a normal human. His senses felt sharper. The world felt louder. He laughed once, short and disbelieving. "So I transmigrated," he muttered. "Okay, fine, sure." Of all the possibilities, this one wasn't the worst. He liked omegaverse. He'd fantasized about powerful alphas more times than he'd ever admit out loud. If he had to wake up in another world, this genre wasn't exactly a punishment. Then the next memory surfaced. A destined omega. A female lead. A perfect match written by fate. Mark's smile vanished. Why this novel? He searched his mind desperately. The plot was hazy, incomplete. Fragments only. This wasn't one of his favorites. He hadn't even finished reading it back in his old life. Which meant one thing. He didn't know how this story ended. That realization sent a chill down his spine, quickly followed by reluctant excitement. Uncertainty was dangerous, but it was also thrilling. He'd always adapted quickly. Peaceful didn't mean passive. By the end of the day, Mark, now Ethan, had done what he always did best. He adjusted. Ethan Cole became known for his calm efficiency. Board members noticed no difference. Assistants noted he was sharper, quieter, harder to read. His signature remained the same, his authority unquestioned. If anything, he seemed more alive. The only issue was the Omega, Elena Vale. She was beautiful in the way the world approved of, graceful, soft-spoken, eyes that curved sweetly when she smiled. The kind of woman men fawned over instinctively. Ethan felt nothing. No pull, no heat, no instinctive urge to protect or pursue. Just politeness. He remembered meeting her before, family dinners, formal gatherings, polite conversations that never quite became real. Back then, Ethan Cole had played his role well, attentive enough, distant enough. Mark understood why now. He was gay. He'd always been gay. And even transmigrating into the body of a dominant alpha hadn't changed that one crucial truth. He liked alphas, so he kept his distance. Elena didn't seem bothered. In fact, she seemed relieved. Too relieved. She smiled easily, joked with others, treated Ethan like a convenient presence rather than a romantic interest. Mark noticed. And somewhere else, others noticed too. The first time Adrian and Julian Vale truly saw Ethan, it was at a formal business banquet. They arrived late. The room shifted the moment they entered. Two men identical in face but worlds apart in presence. Power clung to them like a second skin. Their reputations preceded them. Youngest billionaire CEOs in the business world, ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. Everyone knew them as alphas. Everyone was wrong. Ethan was speaking to a board member when the sensation hit him. Sharp, overwhelming. A pressure in the air that made his alpha instincts stir despite himself. He turned instinctively and met their eyes. Adrian's gaze was cold, calculating, darkening as it traced Ethan's posture, his throat, the pulse at his neck. Julian smiled. It was slow, intimate, dangerous. Something deep in Ethan's chest reacted violently, confusion, interest, a flicker of excitement he hadn't felt since transmigrating. His pheromones shifted unconsciously, rich and controlled. The twins felt it. Julian inhaled softly, eyes flashing. Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's him," Julian murmured under his breath. "Our alpha," Adrian replied quietly. From that moment, it was over. The Vale family had always known. They knew Elena's affection was shallow, a game played for convenience. They knew Ethan Cole was valuable, strong, intelligent, independent, unmoved by superficial charm. And they knew their twins. The obsession wasn't sudden. It was inevitable. From that night onward, every gathering was arranged carefully. Seating shifted. Conversations guided. Accidental meetings became routine. Ethan noticed the twins more often than he'd like. Adrian's steady presence, Julian's infuriating charm. Their pheromones lingered, subtle, intoxicating, calming in ways Ethan didn't understand. He told himself it was nothing. The twins told themselves it was fate. They watched him closely, how he avoided Elena without cruelty, how his gaze followed powerful men unconsciously, how his control never cracked unless challenged directly. He was perfect, and he didn't even know he was being claimed. By the end of the night, as Ethan left the banquet with a faint frown and an unsettled heart, the Vale family exchanged knowing looks. Elena laughed somewhere in the distance, unaware. The twins stood side by side, eyes dark with promise. Their alpha had arrived, and this time they wouldn't let him go. Chapter 2. I like alphas. 5 months. That was how long Mark, now fully answering to Ethan Cole, had lived in this world. 5 months was enough time to stop waking up in panic, enough time to walk into boardrooms without hesitation, to sign billion-dollar contracts with steady hands, to accept that this was no longer borrowed time. This was his life now. And yet, some things refused to settle. Tonight's family dinner was one of them. The Vale estate glowed warmly under crystal chandeliers, laughter echoing softly across the long dining table. The food was exquisite, the wine perfectly aged, the atmosphere carefully curated. Too carefully. Ethan sat beside Elena Vale, his posture straight, expression composed. To anyone watching, they looked like the picture of an ideal alpha-omega pair. Beautiful, powerful, inevitable. Only they knew how hollow it was. Elena leaned closer, lowering her voice with a faint smile. "You've been distant lately, Ethan." He turned to her, eyes calm. "Have I? You don't call. You don't visit." She shrugged lightly. "People are starting to talk." Ethan said nothing. Across the table, Adrian Vale had stopped eating. Julian Vale was watching him over the rim of his glass, smile lazy, eyes sharp. The air thickened. Elena sighed, a touch of irritation finally seeping through. "If you're unhappy, you should say so. Dragging this out is pointless." That struck something raw. Ethan placed his cutlery down with deliberate precision. "You're right." The table quieted. Elena blinked. "What?" "I said, you're right." His voice was even, controlled. "Dragging this out is pointless." A faint crease appeared between her brows. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" He met her gaze fully now, calm, resolute. "I don't feel anything for you." A ripple went through the table. Victor Vale's brows lifted slightly. Margaret Vale's fingers paused mid-motion. A few distant relatives exchanged glances. Elena laughed awkwardly. "You're joking." "No," Ethan said softly. "I'm not." Her smile fell. "Then what is this supposed to be?" Ethan exhaled. He'd rehearsed this conversation in his head 100 times. There was no anger in him, only certainty. "I'm gay," he said clearly. "I like alphas." The words landed like a blade. Silence. Utter, suffocating silence. Elena stared at him, stunned. Not heartbroken, not furious, just surprised. As if she'd been caught off guard by a truth she'd never bothered to ask about. Across the table, Julian's smile vanished. Adrian's eyes darkened. pupils dilating as something feral stirred beneath his calm exterior. Their pheromones spiked, controlled, restrained, but unmistakably territorial. Mine. Margaret Vale recovered first, her gaze shifting sharply toward Elena. You knew? She asked quietly. Elena looked away. I suspected. Victor frowned. And you said nothing? Elena shrugged, unfazed. It wasn't serious. Ethan was convenient. That was the moment everything changed. Julian's glass shattered in his hand. No one reacted. No one except Ethan, whose eyes flicked instinctively toward the sound. Julian smiled again, but it was wrong this time. Too slow, too cold. Convenient, he echoed softly. Adrian placed a hand over Julian's wrist. Firm, grounding. A warning. Ethan didn't notice the exchange. He was too focused on Elena, disbelief flickering briefly across his face before settling into something harder. So that's all I was to you, he said quietly. Elena met his gaze, unapologetic. You're an alpha CEO. It was expected. The Vale family saw it then, clearly. Elena's indifference. Ethan's honesty. The twins' barely restrained possession. Margaret Vale inhaled, slowly, her eyes moving to her sons. They weren't amused. They weren't curious. They were claimed. Later that night, after Ethan had left early, the family gathered in the private sitting room. Julian stood near the window, jaw clenched. Adrian sat opposite Victor, posture rigid, control razor thin. You heard him, Julian said quietly. He likes alphas. Victor nodded slowly. I did. And you saw her, Adrian added. She doesn't care. Margaret folded her hands. We've always known. Silence stretched. Julian turned, eyes burning. Then stop pretending. Adrian spoke next, voice low and dangerous. He's ours. No one argued. Margaret sighed softly. We won't force him. Julian smiled faintly. No. Adrian's gaze sharpened. We'll make him choose. Victor leaned back. Carefully. Julian's pheromones settled into something calculated, seductive. We have time. Adrian's hand tightened unconsciously. And patience. In the shadows of the Vale estate, plans began to form. Not loud, not rushed. Quiet. Precise. Inevitable. Far away, Ethan Cole lay awake in his penthouse, unsettled by the echo of unfamiliar pheromones still clinging faintly to his senses. He told himself it meant nothing. The twins knew better. The hunt had begun. Chapter 3. Arranged, trapped, desired. After that dinner, things changed. Quietly, irrevocably. Ethan didn't notice it at first. Meetings that once required deliberate scheduling began to overlap. Charity galas, business summits, private lounges at airports. Wherever he went, Adrian and Julian Vale seemed to already be there, effortless, unhurried, as though the world itself bent to accommodate their presence beside him. At first, it irritated him. Then, it soothed him. Their pheromones were subtle, controlled, nothing like the aggressive dominance he'd sensed from other alphas in this world. Around the twins, Ethan felt calm, his shoulders loosening, his thoughts slowing, his instincts quieting in a way that felt dangerously good. Too good. Julian would lean close during conversations, voice warm, teasing. Adrian would stand just behind him, silent, steady, a presence like an anchor. Ethan told himself it was nothing more than compatibility. The twins told themselves it was working. Elena noticed first. You're avoiding me, she snapped during one of their increasingly rare meetings. Ethan didn't deny it. I thought we'd already settled this. Her eyes flicked behind him, to where Adrian and Julian stood at a polite distance watching. Always watching. This is because of them, she said sharply. Ethan frowned. This isn't about anyone else. But Elena laughed bitterly. Don't lie. My uncles are circling you like predators. That was the day everything exploded. The argument was loud, ugly, long overdue. Elena accused them of manipulation. Julian smiled and didn't deny it. Adrian's patience finally snapped. "You're leaving," he said coldly. Elena stared. "You can't be serious." Victor Vale's voice followed, firm and unyielding. "You're going back to your parents." Margaret Vale didn't look at her niece. "This arrangement has gone on long enough." Elena's outrage shook the walls, but it didn't matter. Within a week, she was gone. Ethan heard about it afterward. He felt relief and guilt, and something darker he didn't want to examine too closely. The proposal came wrapped in silk and steel. It was Victor Vale who invited Ethan to dinner, alone this time. The atmosphere was heavy, deliberate. Business documents lay neatly arranged on the table. "A merger," Victor said calmly. "Partial ownership, shared resources." Ethan skimmed the numbers and nearly stilled. The benefits were astronomical. "This would elevate Coal Dynamics beyond its current tier," Ethan said slowly. Victor nodded. "In exchange, we propose an arranged marriage." Ethan looked up. "To whom?" The answer came from behind him. "To us." Julian's voice was smooth. Adrian's presence was overwhelming. Ethan turned, heart slamming against his ribs. The twins stood side by side, immaculate, composed, eyes burning with something dangerously close to devotion. "This is sudden," Ethan said carefully. Julian smiled. "We've been patient." Adrian spoke next, gaze unwavering. "We want you." Silence stretched. Ethan's mind raced. An arranged marriage wasn't unusual in this world. Power unions were common, strategic, logical, and his partners would be alphas. His throat went dry. Money, power, stability, and against all logic, excitement. Internally, Mark screamed, "I'm marrying alphas? Actual billionaire alphas? Is this real?" Outwardly, Ethan remained calm. "I'll agree," he said evenly. "On one condition." Julian tilted his head. "Name it." "This marriage is professional," Ethan said. "No interference with my autonomy." Adrian's lips curved faintly. Of course. It was the first lie they told him. The wedding was extravagant, private, exclusive, sealed away from public eyes. Ethan stood between them, dressed in ceremonial black and gold. Their scents wrapped around him completely, drowning out every other presence. When the officiant spoke of bonding, Adrian's hand tightened around Ethan's wrist. Julian leaned close, whispering, "This is important." The mark burned. Not painful, but deep, permanent. A connection snapping into place so violently Ethan gasped. His instincts screamed, confusion, pleasure, submission, fear. "It's tradition," Julian murmured soothingly as Ethan swayed slightly. "A wedding ritual," Adrian added, steadying him. Ethan believed them. He didn't see the hunger in their eyes. Didn't feel the cage locking shut. When the ceremony ended, the Vale family watched with quiet satisfaction. Their alpha was bound. By the time Ethan lay in bed that night, surrounded by unfamiliar scents that made his limbs heavy and his thoughts slow, he told himself he was happy. After all, he had wealth, power, two alpha husbands who wanted him. What he didn't know was that the marks were never meant to be symbolic. They were meant to ensure one thing: Ethan Cole would never escape them. Chapter 4. Pregnant with the Impossible. If anyone had asked Ethan Cole when his life began to unravel, he wouldn't have pointed to a catastrophe. He would have pointed to comfort. Domestic life with Adrian and Julian settled into a strange, relentless rhythm, one that wrapped around him before he realized he'd stopped resisting. Mornings began with arguments. "You're drinking coffee again," Adrian said coolly, sliding a nutrient-rich alternative across the counter. Ethan scowled. "I'm not fragile." Julian grinned, already cutting fruit. "You are beloved. There's a difference." Ethan scoffed and drank the substitute anyway. They bickered about schedules, contracts, Ethan's tendency to overwork. They argued in elevators and offices over comms calls that made board members quietly excuse themselves. And yet they fed him, sheltered him, scented him relentlessly. Whenever Ethan returned from work exhausted, their pheromones met him first, heavy, enveloping, calming his racing thoughts without him noticing how dependent he'd become on that feeling of safety. At the office, assistants whispered about how radiant their CEO looked lately. At home, the Vale family watched with quiet approval. Margaret Vale adored him. She invited him for tea, corrected his posture gently, praised his business instincts openly. Victor Vale discussed markets and legacy with him as though Ethan had always been meant to sit at the head of the table. Even distant relatives warmed quickly. "You fit," one of them said once, smiling knowingly. Ethan laughed it off. He didn't see the cage. The intimacy didn't trouble him. Married couples consummated their bonds. It was normal. Alpha marriages weren't unheard of. He didn't question why the closeness felt necessary, why missing a night left him restless and off balance. He was calm by nature, practical, not prone to spiraling. So he didn't notice the way his body responded faster each time. Didn't notice how his instincts leaned toward the twins instinctively. Didn't notice how the marks burned warmer with every passing month. Until nearly a year passed, and his body betrayed him. The nausea was dismissed at first. Stress, the doctor said. Overwork? But then came dizziness, fatigue that pheromones couldn't fully soothe, a strange, persistent warmth low in his abdomen that made his alpha instincts recoil in confusion. The test was routine. The result was not. Dr. Rowan Hale's face went pale. "Ethan," he said carefully, "you're pregnant." The room went silent. Ethan stared at him. "That's not funny." Rowan swallowed. "I'm not joking." Ethan laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. "That's impossible. 3 alphas can't." Adrian stood. Julian closed the door. The truth arrived like a blade. "They're enigmas," Rowan said quietly. Ethan turned slowly. "What?" Adrian met his gaze without flinching. Julian's expression was soft, devoted. "We're enigmas," Julian said calmly. "We always have been." The words didn't make sense. The family knew. The doctors knew. The world didn't. The realization cracked something open inside Ethan. "You lied," he said hoarsely. Adrian nodded. "Yes." "You manipulated me." Julian didn't deny it. "Yes." "You marked me, bound me, knowing this would happen." Silence. Then Adrian spoke, voice steady, unrepentant. "We don't regret it." Julian stepped closer, eyes burning. "We wanted you." The room exploded. Ethan's fury was volcanic. He shouted. He accused. He raged at Victor and Margaret, at Rowan, at the entire family who had watched this unfold and allowed it. Margaret cried quietly. Victor stood firm. The twins didn't move. "You took my choice," Ethan said, voice breaking. "You caged me." Adrian stepped forward slowly. "We protected you." Julian's hand hovered near Ethan's back, never touching. "And we love you." The words hurt more than the lies. The doctors intervened. Stress was dangerous. The pregnancy was rare, fragile. Ethan was ordered to rest. And the cruelest truth of all settled in as he lay awake that night, heart pounding, sense wrapping around him automatically. He loved them. Loved the way Adrian watched over him. Loved Julian's quiet tenderness. Loved the family that had accepted him completely. Anger didn't erase that. It only made it ache. Outside the room, Adrian and Julian stood guard. Territorial, unwavering, prepared to burn the world down if necessary. Their alpha was carrying their child. And no matter how furious he was, they would never let him go. Chapter 5. Ours Forever. The verdict came quietly. Dr. Rowan Hale stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped, voice steady but grave. "Any more emotional stress," he said, "could kill both Ethan and the child." The words settled like a death sentence. Adrian didn't react outwardly, but something feral slipped into his gaze. a promise of annihilation for anything that dared disturb their mate again. Julian, for once, stopped smiling. From that moment on, the world rearranged itself around Ethan Cole. Ethan remained angry. That anger was real, sharp, justified, and the twins never tried to deny it. Instead, they endured it. They learned the precise way Ethan liked his tea. They memorized his breathing when nightmares woke him. They canceled meetings, rearranged empires, slept on the floor beside his bed when he refused to let them touch him. Adrian handled security and silence. Julian handled warmth and reassurance. Neither left his side. When Ethan snapped, they listened. When he cried, they held him, only when allowed. When his instincts flared in confusion and fear, their pheromones softened, never overwhelming, only grounding. Slowly, inevitably, his anger dulled, not because he forgot, but because he saw how deeply they were willing to bend. At 4 months, everything changed again. Dr. Hale's hands trembled as he studied the scan. "There's more than one," he said carefully. Ethan's heart dropped. "How many?" "Ew, 3. Triplets." The risk multiplied instantly. Adrian went pale for the first time in his life. Julian laughed once, hysterical, broken, before kneeling beside the bed and pressing his forehead to Ethan's hand. "Of course," Julian whispered, "you'd give us everything." From then on, they became shadows. Adrian slept beside him every night, arm locked protectively around Ethan's waist. Julian managed every meal, every medication, every moment of rest. The Vale family rotated shifts. Margaret sang to Ethan's stomach. Victor argued with doctors until the best specialists were flown in. Ethan watched all of it, this relentless devotion. And something inside him finally cracked. One quiet night, when Julian was brushing his hair and Adrian was reading beside him, Ethan spoke. "I already love you, don't I?" Neither twin answered immediately. Adrian closed the book. Julian swallowed. "Yes," Adrian said softly. "And we would have waited forever for you to say it." That was when Ethan stopped fighting. The birth nearly killed him. 2 boys came first, strong, crying, unmistakably Vale. Then a girl, silent for one horrifying moment before drawing breath. Ethan didn't hear them cry. He collapsed, blood loss severe, consciousness slipping away. For 2 weeks he lay in a coma. The twins lost their minds. Adrian refused to leave the room. Julian slept clutching Ethan's hand, whispering apologies over and over. The Vale family hovered, terrified. When Ethan finally woke, weak and disoriented, the first thing he felt was scent. Overwhelming, frantic, loving. Julian sobbed openly. Adrian's hands shook as he touched Ethan's face. "You're awake," Julian whispered. "You're here." Recovery took months. Even after 2 months, they didn't let him lift a finger. They fed him, bathed him, carried the babies to him carefully, reverently. The world never learned the truth. The twins remained alphas in public. Their children were simply miracles. Ethan Cole became untouchable, protected by power, wealth, and devotion that bordered on worship. And one quiet evening, watching his children sleep between his husbands, Ethan smiled, faintly. He had wanted a peaceful life. He got obsession instead. And somehow, it was everything.